Hey everybody, I'm Nico.
And I'm TK.
And that makes this X's for Podcast, your one and only reaction to all things comics that come out that day. Sometimes don't come out that day. We'll definitely be getting into that in the fucking minute. But comics are a thing where if you don't stay current, if you are not at that Wednesday, you fall out of sequence so fast. I feel like if I don't watch an episode of a TV show, I might get screwed because somebody's gonna, open their big yap. But like for the most part, if I miss a comic, I'm gonna get it spoiled in 13 other comics.
Or on Twitter. I mean, it's so funny. X spoilers is like the greatest tag of all time because it's so simple and perfect, and it has such an important function, and yet 25% of people use it and use it appropriately, etc. Marvel spoilers is even tough. Like, I get it, Avengers spoilers. You're not going to do Daredevil Woman Without Fear spoilers. Some of the other comic tags are, Batman spoilers would be easy to do too, but then what book are you talking about? Catwoman, I guess, technically, sure, maybe, but X spoilers I love as a tag because it just usually on Wednesday, it was so great during Krakoa because people were a little bit better then, and if you really kept your circle to hardcore
X, were better then.
Just as a general rule, if you kept your circle to like really close knit X-Men fans, you kind of were actually really safe if you muted X spoilers the tag on Wednesdays. Like, there was a lot of time where I was like, oh, wow, like I did not get anything spoiled for me this week. But that all has broken down entirely. And for one thing, I don't care anymore about getting spoiled on anything that happens on X-Men, which, by the way, happened immediately today. Because if anything that matters since this all got published has happened, it was today's issue of Uncanny. And immediately all of the headlines in my like Google discovery, all over Twitter, everywhere I went, were a Bleeding Cool article that just immediately spoils what happens in Uncanny X-Men.
Well, but I love that spoiler is a counter spoiler to the anti spoiler. So, okay, I love how fast this machine is working at this point, where the little AI minion bots that do the bidding of these writers that, pull up all of the information that's supposedly journalism. Because I saw all of these articles about how Sarah Gaunt isn't Sarah Gaunt. She's actually this minor character from one issue of Hulk UK Comics, where in Hulk UK, which, had Captain Britain as a backup story, and then the same website ran an article the next day. Everything you need to know about X-Men's newest villain, the brand new character, Sarah Gaunt. And it's like, you're literally running material against itself. And maybe it is that character, maybe it isn't. Maybe it's an all-new character, maybe it's not. But at the end of the day, part of what's hard to talk about is like those Hulk UK comics. They kind of get referenced, they kind of don't. They're kind of canon, they're kind of not. So, I don't know. I think the fact that sometimes the spoilers are wrong, and then I get on here and I sound like the world's biggest doofus, is not my fave.
I mean, yeah, I don't. What can we do at this point? And it's really just as you put it. Like it is the AIification of comics journalism and just the clickbaity headlines. We all know it's happening. It's weird. Because, like, that's why we do this show, I think, is, like, to not be doing exactly that when we talk about comics and to, be able to talk about news and spoilers a little bit and theories and Easter eggs and stuff that we get. But we do have to actually show up, like, put in the work and, write stuff down, like, actually figure this all out. But it's funny because in the course of doing that, you end up engaging with a lot. You have to, in order to research, you have to muddy through a lot of that journalism that is just absolute dreck. And I kind of don't, there's no really good remedy for it.
It's interesting that you say that there's this element of like, you wind up engaging with the fandom. It's something that like I find myself struggling with in this age of post classic X's for podcast. Like, I feel bad saying it, but like, you even pointed it out. It's no longer the Krakoan age. And so like, I threw up a tweet today. I'm a big fan of DC Heroes and Villains, the Match 3 game. And I got like the ultimate pull of my life today. And very little could make me as happy as what I pulled. And I tweeted about it. And I actually like heard from some old members of X's for podcast because I pulled the love of my life. And so there's my husband, Sinestro. And he joins my Black Lantern team with Black Lantern Superman, Black Hand, and Black Lantern Wonder Woman. And I posted about it. And, former series contributor Arturo liked on it. And I was like, right, I forgot. He and I have Lantern Corps together. And so, like, one of the things that does happen is every time you disengage from an element of fandom, it feels like a breakup in a very specific way. Like, whether it's that thing where you guys kept trying to call each other and it never worked out, or it's like there was a bad moment where there literally was Hellfire Gala Volume 3, right? And you'd even seen the problems coming, and like, or there was, any number of things. But like when a comic era ends, it feels like a breakup or a loss of a friend group. There is this like moment of disenfranchised emotional energy because that zeitgeist is no longer reachievable. And like, I wonder how much I think back to the glory early COVID days of I feel hopeless, I feel lost, I feel like I have nothing. Oh my gosh, here's this amazing community who came together over this shared love of fiction online, and we kept each other going. Like, we came up with things when the books weren't coming out, and we covered old shit. And like, I really do wonder how much some of the disenfranchisement of the Krakoan era is they recognized that some of the machine that did the work was COVID.
I think that is some of the soil in which the seed of fandom was planted that was fertile and allowed things to grow. But I think it could have kept going without that. I just think this is not the era to allow for that to happen.
Well, and I think part of that has to do with how hard they're working to keep this era momentous. Like, the energy they want us to get from this era. They don't want us to slow down on feeling this X-Men machine so good. And, I saw a tweet the other day that was like, I'm blocking some terms for my sanity and my mental health. Bo DeMayo. And I feel like something
Beauregard Day of Mayonnaise.
Yes, absolutely. Like, because one of the things that I'm kind of stuck with is I'm realizing how much my reactions to comics are shifted by my reactions to things. I'm going to say something really stupid, and it's going to sound like one of those Nico non sequiturs, but like, I have some friends that do OnlyFans, and like one of the things they say is that essentially they get 17 cents a day from people. That's generous. And sometimes they have to talk 3 hours a day to people just to keep them okay, just to keep them subscribed for 17 cents a day. And it's just not worth it. And you wind up in this position where people like will literally say to them, like, well, then why the fuck are you on OnlyFans? And you just want to be like, well, then why are you subscribing? You lived a fine life before you had this. So how can you not disengage? And I think about my relationship with disengagement from comics. When I worked at a comic shop, I made the conscious decision to step into a realm of talking about this every minute of every day. And it's why shows like Comic Book Guys were necessary, right? To create the enculturation in that moment, culturally speaking. But now we've reached a point where like, I can't put my phone down and I can't stop playing comic book games and I can't stop reading comics and listening to comic book audio podcasts because I can. And I do 1,000 other things with my phone in between, but I don't stop doing those things. And I wonder how much where we live in comics now is a result of the co-immediacy of media and expectation.
Yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. I think I just feel like it plays out so differently for everybody. Like we're all just kind of, and that's, I think part of the point is like Krakoa felt like a unifying journey and we're now kind of all on our own journeys.
And I feel like that is so true of what happened to us today.
Yeah.
Those of you,
we're all on our own journeys with how we get our comics.
Yeah, you guys might be trying to check out Mystique #1 and find out that like the digital edition didn't come out, and like the digital edition of Action Comics 1071 is listed for next week, despite last week's issue being listed as the start of weekly Action Comics. And so like there are so many things, and this has been happening more and more in the last couple of years, but I feel like it almost gets hard to plan these shows sometimes.
No, it literally gets hard to plan these shows.
Yeah.
Because that was our intention today, was to cover Mystique. But we are both digital buyers, and we had a whole plan. And at a certain point today, I said, I just went to go buy it, and it's not coming out till October 23rd. And it is just the Kindle store or Comixology, it's the Amazon sale. And I don't even know that it's like a thing. Like, I think it might just be a mistake. I don't know that it's like Amazon gets it later. But it's available on Vivi, but I'm not doing that because Nico and I had this conversation when they announced it, and I was sitting in the auto dealership getting my car tuned up. But I'm just not gonna. I don't like it's another NFT thing. I don't support the fact that Marvel took down its comic store and did Vivi, which is not a thing. And so no, I'm not doing that. And then Action Comics, I don't know what happened there at all. It was so weird. Those were like two of the big books we wanted to cover this week, and they both just accidentally are not there on the Amazon store. And that just is how it is. So we had to change our coverage entirely based on that, which is fine. Like there's plenty of other stuff to cover, and we're good to go. But yeah, I mean, it does sort of speak to that sense of a lack of unity where I don't know. I mean, I know in this case it may have just been a simple mistake, but it has been happening, it seems like, a lot more. Dates are changing really fast, and it's if we're planning our show like a couple months out based on release dates, sometimes things will change 2 weeks in advance, and so we're kind of, unless we're checking repeatedly every week, we've missed something a couple times that changed really last minute. And I just don't remember this being the case 3 years ago.
And I think part of it has to do with the homogenization of the experience 3 years ago and the slightly more, I almost said volatile reaction to market stimulus, but I don't know that I mean volatile. I just mean hyper reactive, because like I thought in my head, I'm like, oh, okay, so Task Force 7 was 6 issues. No, it was 7 issues. And Boy Wonder is 5 issues. And Elektra turned out to be a 4-issue miniseries following a 4-issue miniseries with a 4-issue miniseries coming up next. And like, I'm just trying to keep track of all of this. And it's
why would you not just give her 12 issues?
It's really starting to be like AOL inches, because like all of it is, it's like one number and then you get it and it's another number, but everybody seems to be okay with this fictitious number. And it's just this idea of stepping behind the solicit, right? I think comic books as an industry are cowards hiding behind the solicit sometimes, because it comes out 2 months in advance, and sometimes nothing is drawn, nothing is written. It's a good idea with some fun fucking cover, and a good idea with a fun cover but nothing going on inside of it is a bad date. So I don't know why you would do it to yourself for $3.99. And that's where I'm sort of struggling, but I'm sort of like struggled by comics, because I keep giving them the money. I went out and bought 9 copies of Absolute Batman, which I had the lowest review of the two of us. And I know it should be lower, but we're going to go with lowest because I was kind of indignant about it. So like, I don't know. I feel like I couldn't get Mystique #1 today, which is fine because it's going to get canceled at 6 anyway.
It's also fine because I still this is the last and I'm actually glad we're not talking about it, because I'm sick of doing this. And this was the last in my love this person, why were they given this book? Mystique deserved a woman, a trans woman, a queer person, somebody who is not a straight white man writing the book. Don't get me wrong, straight white men are great. There's tons of stuff they can write. They've been writing comics forever, therefore they don't need to always be writing them. Mystique is a uniquely mutable character, sure, as a morphing character. Yes, she can be many things. She has chosen a feminine identity. We have kind of, in the last 5 years or so, especially embraced Mystique as a feminine presenting person who is kind of on the trans spectrum as somebody who can be male and who has been male to the point of conceiving a child as a male and then goes on to be female presenting for the rest of the time. So Mystique, you know, I know that a lot of people want to make the argument that, like, because Mystique can be anything, anybody can write her, but we're just not there yet, and just women are not writing enough stuff. Again, I feel like Storm should be written by a woman, although I am very happy to see, I like kind of trying to pull back a lot of my criticism on that, because I see at least the community that I am faced with online, Black readers, men and women, are very happy with this portrayal of Storm, with the writer of Storm, even though it is a man. And that's, to me, who it's most important that this book reach and affect. But Dazzler, again, I love Jason Lowe so much. Great writer. I would want him on so many books. It's not that he shouldn't ever write Dazzler. We only got Exterminators recently where a woman was writing. It just doesn't happen enough. And so, yeah, I'm kind of glad we're not covering it, because, again, I think I would just have the same complaint of, I'm sure it's going to be a great book because Declan Shalvey's awesome, and has written some really good stuff for, like his original, X-Men Unlimited Krakoan era stories for Wolverine were so good, and the art was so fantastic. Like, great writer. And I think he would do a very similar type of workup for Mystique. I think he will when I get to read it. But again, like, just Erica Schultz, Alyssa Wong, there's just so many people I can think of who I would want to be writing this first, because it's time.
It is part of where I really, really appreciate you reminding me and giving the important input that the community that Storm is for, because fuck me, I don't matter. Honestly, there's so many white Storm books for me. Let there be a voice of blackness for the Black community writing Storm.
Jed MacKay is writing Storm in Avengers right now. If you are a white man that needs white man Storm, she's available at any time. You're good.
And so when I think about that, she is being portrayed in this way, I only ask that we remember something that at the time hit me in an extreme way. I was the least cool kid at theater camp in 20 whatever, because I was like, look, I love Lin-Manuel Miranda. I literally want to be Lin-Manuel Miranda. But no, he never should have written Hamilton. The Latino guy of means growing up should have not written the musical about what it means to be Black in a white era through the lens of Black music. And ultimately we got to the point of the very famous Twitter story with the face and the, you know, and we get there, and I am not saying that will be this, but I am saying the Black community that heralded Hamilton did eventually come back around and say, yeah, but it maybe would have been cool if there had been a unique voice that had done it from a place of more authenticity, but we're still so grateful. I'll be excited to see this run of Storm forever be remembered like a Chris Claremont run for what it did for comics by being important, so that the next run can feature a woman's voice, a Black woman's voice, to really highlight where it really can only be one step at a time, can't it?
And that's, you know, we're sitting in this place of like, I will be really happy if I get another Storm book in a year, but it's taken us this long to get one in the first place. And well, I mean, we've had Storm minis before, but you know, and I just think about every time I see Joe in Green Lantern, I think about N.K. Jemisin, who is one of my favorite novelists of all time, who's written some of my favorite books. Broken Earth trilogy, absolutely phenomenal. Incredible Afrofuturist writer, woman, total geek, streams her gameplay on Twitch, wrote Far Sector, created Joe Mullane, a very fantastic Green Lantern. Why is she not writing this? Danny Lore. There are people who are already set up to do this. It's not hard to find people that you could pay to write this. That would be great. So yeah, I mean, if the community that this book is for, and by for I mean like that really can take something out of it the way that like gay people really get something out of seeing an Iceman book. I'm happy. Like if the Black community takes something out of Storm, I don't need, I'm not trying to. I always go back to that sketch that pops up in my social media of the people like yelling at the guy in his taco truck because he's a white man, but he's just the guy who's like doing the bills. The owner of the truck and the cook is actually Mexican. Anyway, I'm not trying to get too woke on this, but I do think we are at a line where just like Mystique doesn't need to be written by a dude. Yeah.
I agree. I really do. And, so I can't wait to actually review the book next week. And that's not meant like as a dig at either of us. No, I mean that like really genuinely.
Yeah. Because if it's an A, it's still going to be an A where I say such a good book. Really wish it. I mean, like I'm already there. If it is a great book, it's a great book. That doesn't change. And again, like Jason Lowe's Dazzler, really good book. There's a lot I really enjoyed about it. Was it like it had problems. It had stuff that I might have done differently, but like I thought really good book. It's not that any of these people can't write any of these characters. It's that a lot of other people who also can write the characters never get the chance to, and there's something about that lived body experience when writing the characters that does at this point matter, because it's been years and years and years and we've seen so many stories told that at this point it's kind of the only thing we have left is that authenticity and that connection.
And I feel like that is part of where I'm gonna say something a little off the wall. I caught up on Avengers Assemble, which is perhaps the least necessary book in the history of the Marvel experience.
Oh.
Because one of the things that like I want to do is I want to become Hercules. I am one kind of queer, mask until I open my mouth and the purses fall out, kind of gay, and but like I want to be like. There's something about Herc that when you look at him, you're just like, yo, that dude loves being verse. Like he's just all of that queerness in one moment. And it is so beautiful. And I would love to be that kind of queerness. Steve Orlando is not that kind of queerness, not in his writing and not in the character of the writer that he projects. And so that the major queerness of his book, or male queerness, because we don't need gay men writing lesbians any more than we need straight people writing lesbians, is Hercules, who is basically there because the artist is good at drawing hot men. And I think between the two books, I'm giving them a C and a C-. I thought that issues 1 and 2 of this were like really unspecial and unspectacular. And they kind of reminded me what Krakoa felt like an escape from. They felt like an escape from the meandering miniseries, which is where I'm kind of also glad that we didn't read Mystique yet, because I can't already see how it's going to be canceled really quickly. Because at that same speed, Avengers Assemble represents the sort of safety that Marvel is always looking for, whereas Uncanny X-Men is taking a lot of chances, a lot of weird fucking swings. They work for me. This was maybe my least favorite issue of the 4 so far at a B, but only because there's too many things going on at this point, and it's a little too Harriet the Spy. It's somewhere between Harriet the Spy and Slumdog Millionaire. It's like if there's a cut every 3 seconds, you'll never notice what's going on. And I'm just having a little trouble keeping up with Gail Simone's cocaine speed on this title at times.
It's so funny you say that because I completely agree, but my problem was last issue. My problem was the introduction of the kids, and I was like, this is too much math for a 5-year-old. Like, I can't. This kid's like a deaf kid, and this one is not a mutant, but she has there's a horse in the mix. She kind of seems like a Valkyrie that's lost at the mall. So I don't understand what's going on with any of the kids. And then on top of that, we have the core X-Men group that are all dealing with their own stuff. Then we have Charles Xavier in the prison presently, and the prison guards and everything. And then we have Charles Xavier's past with Sarah Gaunt. Then we have Sarah Gaunt in the present. Like it is really a lot.
By the way, I before I can forget, I saw Sarah Gaunt perform at Lilith Fair in 1997.
Oh my gosh, she was so good. I have a bootleg of that.
And it's her and this tambourine, and she's just playing Mr. Tambourine Man for 2 hours. It's incredible.
Yep. Truly one of the greats of our time. So for me, this was last week's was the one I really had trouble with. This was a great one for me. Mostly because at this point I might not have all the specifics, but I have all of the elements. And
so you're the Avatar.
Yes, thank you. And we didn't really have the kids except for them showing up to be like, we're here too.
Get that extra pay.
Yeah, please. Oh man. Again, we are faced with the authors can't help the era that they're in or the other stuff. This is one where like I maybe have to poke Gale a little bit because come on, you definitely know Legion. And I have to believe at this point, especially if you're writing Rogue and Gambit, you know Xandra. I mean, Gail Simone, really, I believe Gail Simone knows all of this because she seems like such an X-Men reader and nerd that I think that she does know all of the stuff. But so for one thing, is this the secret? Is this the fourth secret? Or the next secret of Charles Xavier that we're doing a mini on? He has another child. I mean, it does feel like a really obvious, like it's actually not his child at all, and this person is just, is just after him. I don't know the specifics, but I don't know that I want to do Charles Xavier's past at all ever again. And so I do kind of want to poke at Gale for that a little bit. At this point, I need a Morrisonian type figure to lay, a Hickman, sure, whoever, to come in and lay out what we're doing with Charles Xavier from now on. Because we have already established completely and totally that he is a horrible person who has done horrible things in the service of this dream that is just kind of horseshit. And I can't keep coming back to this because it loses its effect a little bit more every time. And now he's just kind of comedically a villain. I don't know what to do with it. And the fact that he's not here in any, he's comatose in a jail cell just mentioned.
It's so much deeper than that for me because part of it has to do with the fact that he's become a plot point, not a character. And that's even where we're trying to figure out he's in a jail cell. Maybe he's astrally somewhere else. Maybe the layers that I'm not getting from this have to do with the fact that there is a fiduciary responsibility to hold all of the titles in place, hold all of the titles up. So even if this book, because it has the name in Gail Simone, it gets to have Rogue, Wolverine, Gambit, Xavier. It gets to be the big book that has the appearance from Nightcrawler. One of the things it also has to do is share fairly with the things going on over in X-Men, in Extraordinary X-Men, in Boring X Factor, whatever title. And so I do feel exactly what you're trying to say. It does feel almost like an egregious misuse of Xavier to keep the story going forward at the cost of his character.
And at the same time, I don't know. I'm not compelled by Grey Malkin Prison. I'm compelled by the concepts. You could have got me, but it doesn't really seem like they're doing, like, we're not cutting to it enough. The only thing I know is they have Charles and Teresa, and they have a dude that looks like Cassandra Nova, which is not helped by the fact that Cassandra Nova is a villain in this era, apparently. And then we have Karina, who I don't feel is dressed appropriately for a prison guard. Don't get me wrong.
Well, I mean, it's been hard for her since she lost her brother to
and then
sex traffickers.
And then I was going to get into that. I like that they are people, but like, we haven't, in the 4 issues that we've had, gotten to a place where I can understand why they're calling the X-Men to kind of help them. That can be a cool thing where, it's very ONE, where it was sort of abhorrent to the X-Men that there were Sentinels on the grounds. And as it should be, because the Sentinels were originally made to kill them all. They're machines of genocide. At the same time, everybody there thought they were there to help the dying remnants of mutants. And it was this kind of negotiation between these two sides of like, what are we doing? I don't trust you, but I can see that you think you're doing good. And we haven't had any of that here. It literally is just, they turned their school into the least occupied prison I've ever seen in my life. And then they kind of already feel bad about it, to the point that they're allying themselves with the X-Men. I'm not getting, I think, what I want to get out of it.
In part because what I want to get out of it is a sense of complete fulfillment from the idea in a single title. I understand that one of the things you need to balance when you're looking at an overall, a big picture, is you can't blow the load on the first scene. And so, like, Wolverine is probably one of the worst experiences for me this week as a comic goes. Well, Wolverine #2 was just not good for me. Well, it was a C-, probably my least favorite Solid and Ahmed issue yet. And the art was good, but this whole like, oh, Wendigo can now talk like a person because he's so sad about shit or whatever. Okay. It's one of those things where, like, not every run, and this is going to just sound like I'm being such an ass, but for me, it is actually implausible that every run featured this romanticized idea of reclaiming a villain, finding their goodness, protecting it, nurturing it, and giving them this safe place in canon. I don't know that Wendigo was the next villain to be redeemed. And so this sort of feels like trying to convince me that M&Ms and Skittles go together because they're both little pellet candies. I don't think that Wendigo goes in the same list of villains that need to be redeemed the way perhaps an Omega Red sat so beautifully in the quality of Marvel Comics.
I really agree that Wolverine, part of me wants to really applaud that we have gone in such a focused, hyper-specific, semi-irrelevant direction for Wolverine in this book, because it's sort of like, we do too many books where Wolverine is the most important person in the Marvel universe. They're happening now. Like, he gets Venom War, he gets Deadpool and Wolverine. There's 2 other Wolverine books. There's a Claremont and a Hickman. It's all Wolverine all the time with Marvel. And so to have the primary Wolverine book just be a little Wolverine in Canada story, doing quaint little Canadian things like helping a Wendigo baby, a part of me really appreciates that. because they shouldn't all be the most important story in the Marvel universe. Wolverine is the linchpin around which it hinges, but commercially we know that to be the case. From a capitalist standpoint, it is. And so the problem becomes, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I'm sorry, Solid Nominate, it sucks. You're in a bad position. But I mean, ultimately what it comes down to is I just sort of can't care about Wolverine anymore. And if it was a big story, I would say I'm sick of these big Wolverine stories. And when it's a small one, unless it's really, really good, unless it's really special, I don't care because I can't be convinced of the relevance. You know, I'm really focused on Ahmed's Daredevil because it's the only story featuring Matt Murdock, and it's very important to me what happens to Matt Murdock. It may not be my favorite ever, but I read it with an open mind and an open heart and a view of the past and a view of the future, because all of that matters to me when I talk about Daredevil. And even if it's not my favorite ever, I can appreciate a lot of the stuff that it does, and I can appreciate where it will take Matt in the future. Unfortunately, the same is just not true for Wolverine. If this isn't super relevant, it literally isn't super relevant. It's never going to matter again. And if it is super relevant, where you're still stuck in that place of like, okay, but why is it always Wolverine? I really did appreciate what he was trying to do, but ultimately I was a little bored. I don't care about Department H. I don't care about Wendigos. I don't understand where this fits in the timeline. There's just so much. I mean, I would have tied this book a lot closer to Gail Simone's book.
Agreed.
I might have really worked. I might have, told them that they really have to work together. I might have, really, because Gail should be the boss. Like, I really might have told Saladin Ahmed, like, take your cues from Gail Simone. And, I would have shown the whole Sarah Gaunt fight between, I know we got a lot of it in issue 3, but I would have maybe pulled a bunch of that out of issue 3 to spend more time maybe on the kids or something else, so that we didn't have that breakneck pace that's happening in Uncanny X-Men. Pull out the Wolverine fight, put that in the Wolverine book, and keep the two connected. Because that is the other thing. Like, the prison is really cool theory, really cool in theory, a really cool idea. Those characters, like, I can believe that Karina is an interesting character and Philip Scurvy is an interesting character, that the prison is an interesting idea, but the only place it shows up is in, at most, 1/4 of Uncanny X-Men. It has no presence in Extraordinary. It has no presence in Jed McKay's X-Men. Cyclops is fighting a whole other set of stuff. But if that were their kind of villain monolith for this era, and everybody was dealing with an offshoot of that or a ramification of that, that might tie this together in a way that made things feel connected and relevant.
I also just want to say really quick, a big thanks to people joining in the chat, like Dreamer in DC Comics and Bob the Builder. We are super excited to have you. Super grateful, Bob, that you're agreeing with the stuff we're saying. Big fans. Can't wait to have you in more chats. And I think for me, in hearing what you're saying, part of the problem I'm having is sort of line-wide irrelevance. I don't feel like, just to use sort of a similar example, but not necessarily the same one, I don't know that I feel like the two Daredevil books actually work together at this point. And, I guess it's fine because we're being told that one of the Daredevil books is over. But at the same time, I'm not here for a sort of bland take on Matt and Elektra's relationship. There's this thing where and I feel so bad about it, but if you write a song that goes 1, 3, 5, 4, I'm probably going to get bored. If you write A, B, A, B, C, B, I'm going to be bored. There's just things you can do. There's don't bite your finger and tell me it's sexy. You know what I mean? And I feel like there are beats being hit for the Catholic experience in Daredevil that are not working for me. As somebody who was raised Catholic, sorry about it. It was tough. What's up? And it's fine. But at the same token, this feels performatively Catholic. This feels Catholic by way of The Devil's Advocate. This feels Catholic by way of the movies. And that's not to say that I feel Saladin Ahmed is being disingenuous, but rather that perhaps this story isn't the story that was meant to transition Daredevil and Matt Murdock out of such an important era so flatly, because I do find myself pretty unhappy with the last few issues of Daredevil, The Man Without Fear by Saladin Ahmed, issue 14 in particular, getting a C from me. I feel like the book had a lot more to do a few issues ago, and we have really reached a point of just treading water for the most part. I'm actually really upset to see that Daredevil, The Woman Without Fear, a book that my biggest ding for is the villain. The villain is my biggest ding. Don't get me wrong. I love me a good blonde, blue-eyed guy to like dominate and destroy. So the Greek dom in me, like Elektra, really sees what she sees in this gentleman. Put your foot on his face. It's great. But the reality is, outside of I'm a weird fetishist, there isn't a whole lot of story to be explored here. And so I feel like this book reads like someone said gang war is going to be huge. And this book and actually Avengers Assemble were both born out of gang war is going to be huge. Don't you worry. That same thing you were saying, line-wide relevance. And then it seems like they had time to stop somebody before Avengers Assemble hit the shelves and was able to say to them, guys, cut the blood hunt stuff, cut the gang war stuff, cut everything that's a reference to an event that's already happened. Just move forward. But this book was already too deep in the mess, and as a result, I don't feel like it ever really pulled out.
Yeah, it's what's been really interesting is when you add up Elektra's life in the last year, publishing wise, it feels disjointed and unfair because it's just, and by the way, everything Marvel does feels disjointed and unfair when you're also reading a lot of DC too, and you're seeing a lot of issues that go higher than 24. And you're seeing, we're reading a bunch of jumping on points that for Titans, it's issue 16. For Catwoman, it's issue 69. And that used to be how it was. Like you just kept the books running and presented that this was a good jumping on point. Now, again, this is a capitalist economy. This is how we're creating shareholder value. The numbers show that people buy number ones, and people are skittish around number 68s. I'm just gonna go there with it to save us some time. And I sort of wonder if that's one of those things where it's like, sure, the polling data says that, but what it doesn't say is all these other things that maybe we're taking a little too seriously, the idea that we should just keep doing number ones. Anyway, Elektra throughout Gang War, Blood Hunt, Venom War, her own minis, being in Daredevil, Elektra has been all over the place and gives the impression of a really active live character that I'm having fun following, even though I'm a little frustrated at how I'm following her. Matt has had a very cohesive story under the pen of a very smart writer. That cohesion is fantastic, but I really did think we were maybe doing a maxi with this because it's a 7 Deadly Sins thing. So I figured we would be doing like a sin for every, like we would get through, 7 Deadly Sins in like 10 issues, and then we'd wrap up with 11 and 12. Because of course it's cool if some of them need to be 2, but some sins are super simple and we'll get rid of them in one. Gluttony, just the She-Hulk had to eat a lot and then we were done. But yeah, but I thought like the numbers here are great. We get through 7 Deadly Sins, we have a grand finale, and Matt is on to his next adventure. This has now gone on a little long, and we have a character who is Daredevil, who it would be one thing if he was really conflicted about being Daredevil. He just seems kind of ambivalent. And he doesn't seem particularly happy being a priest, which like the whole point is that was what God thought his ultimate wish was after he fought Satan and won.
God's plan.
It's that, yeah, God's plan.
God's plan.
I feel like if you know Matt Murdock, even though he's very Catholic, that can't have been what he wanted. And we're left in this. Now we're at issue 14. I don't see an end in sight other than we are running out of Deadly Sins. And we have not had a solicit for a new book or an end to this, but we just have this Matt who's like, oh, right, I got to go be Daredevil. Oh, this is so terrible. Oh, I got to go back to the orphanage. Not a fan of this either.
And I just feel like it's for you, God.
Yeah, exactly.
It's for you.
If the whole point of the book is he's just not super happy, I don't know how he's not even angsty. Like we can follow angst, like we can follow a tortured hero. He's not even really tortured. He's just like, I don't know. I don't like any of my options.
Which is not the narrator, which is not the narrator or narrative on a book.
No.
And so, I don't know. For my money, one of the things that made reading The Woman Without Fear tricky was I assumed it was
I didn't talk about that enough. Yeah.
It was like treated like an ongoing.
Yeah.
And I thought that I was buying into an experience that was going to support the quality of this character in a big way. And
there's no reason for this not to have been an ongoing from Gang. Like Gang War should have just been called Daredevil Woman Without Fear. And then we should be 8 issues in.
Yeah. And so the fact that we are instead sort of picking up pieces of a title, when you talk about the difference between an ongoing and a mini series, there actually is a cultural understanding that the two things are different. When somebody's introduced with an ongoing, it makes it feel like Marvel maybe believed in the character a little bit more. But when you introduce somebody in the pages of a miniseries or you give them a miniseries, you're saying that you think the shelf life on this character is a little bit shorter than other people. Now, that does not necessarily mean that Marvel doesn't believe in Elektra or Daredevil as a property, but it does mean that when they make their decisions about Daredevil and Elektra, they're making decisions based on a calendar schedule that isn't the same calendar schedule they make their, let's say, Spider-Man decisions based on. Spider-Man must always be being published at all times. Now, I think we might have even seen some trace elements of that for Daredevil in the fact that the run by Zdarsky was so quickly followed up by the Saladin Ahmed, whose name just became Ahmedin. So sorry, sir. We saw that run not be given the time to breathe, not be given the time to kind of like heal from the fact that it was a canker on canon, and it immediately rolled over into this new title. And I wonder how I would feel if Marvel was taking the chance that like DC takes with, this is the second volume or the second writer on the same volume, how we would feel about that sort of disjointedness on Daredevil if Saladin Ahmed picked up at issue 13 or 14, and then we could have been in a world where Elektra could have had a second volume of a book that was already rightfully hers.
And we're getting Daredevil Unleash Hell.
Yeah, Daredevil sexy mature audience title or whatever.
Yeah, we're gonna do more of this. Like, she's getting another 5-issue mini in January. Like, so it's just a couple months. Rather, like, these all could be combined. And like, if you just put these together in your head, again, it's just kind of a Daredevil book. It's just kind of the story of Elektra in 3 different arcs living the life of being Daredevil, like with very little connective tissue, a little bit of extra writing to connect all these books. You could just have this be an ongoing, and I if this is what's better for the character, sure. If this is what gets books sold, I mean, like Elektra having 3 minis in a year, in like 12 calendar months, is fantastic. Erica Schultz writing all of them, so awesome. But I'm not sure why Elektra, who is a really consistent hero throughout these 3 arcs, is getting this broken up treatment, where Matt, who is really inconsistent, and the book is kind of going nowhere, why this is an ongoing. I mean, I know the big reason is because they were planned this way. This is just Saladin Ahmed was given an ongoing Daredevil book, and Erica Schultz was given multiple minis. But I don't know, from an outside perspective, it's not reading great.
I want to say something a little embarrassing.
Sure.
It's a funny story, and I was saying it to series contributor Jonah earlier today. No matter the relationship I have with anyone, a lot of people in my life call me terms like big guy or big man. A lot of people in my life like to use language that builds me up. I don't know if it's because I am someone who is supportive. Like I have that, like, you want to support that person, because if you don't, you'll feel bad like a puppy. I don't know. But one of the things that it ultimately sort of means is that there is a sort of driving gravity around how people react to me, regardless of the relationship. And I think that when you're talking about a character like Elektra, right, you're talking about a character whose gravity is consistent regardless of the relationship that she's engaging in. And so while Gang War was responsive to a crossover, while Woman Without Fear was responsive to a status quo, and while perhaps this upcoming MA title is responsive to an era where we're seeing success from books along the lines of Black, White, and Blood, I think that even kind of connects to what Dreamer in DC Comics was saying a little bit earlier, with That's How I Feel About Harley Quinn. She started off as a villain, and because of fan reception, she is now a hero. I don't like it that way, but that's what it is. I think ultimately part of what we're dealing with is the idea that Marvel maybe wants to keep the mystique of Elektra by keeping her to these miniseries, by keeping her light, by keeping her frivolous. They're stopping her from becoming tied down and clear, even though we can see those threads are there. The sort of corporate planning strings here, I think, are maybe a little too clear, is part of the problem.
Yeah, and they're failing. That's also the problem. Like, if we could see them and we were like, but man, they're nailing it. They are fully, I'm a capitalist puppet, and they know how to pull my strings. Sorry for that metaphor.
Well, but Madonna in music, like, I think Ray of Light is this crowning achievement in this creative artist, and then music, even though I understand it is the first time she won a Grammy, and it is for music and not a music video, and even though I know it is the first time she was considered like the preeminent artist in the world, I genuinely think music is one of her worst records. It's just bad. I mean, other than Jem's contribution with Nothing Fails. Oh, no, I do still to this day go, push the button, don't push the button, clip the station, change the channel. So I do still do that. But other than that, I think that's kind of even what you're talking about. There's this high-polished commercialization around music where it's treated as this pinnacle of commercial success, even though it's devoid of critical understanding. And I feel like that is part of what the failed puppet string metaphor represents. Music is a capitalist success, but the actual songs are not great.
Yeah. And that's a great example because there is success.
True success, yeah.
I think what we're talking about here is not it's a not a good plan for enjoyment, and it doesn't really seem to be super successful. None of these books are blowing anybody out of the water. They're not changing the game. I mean, it's, again, I hate to always take it back to Krakoa, but during that time I felt like, well, the comics are being published because everybody's so excited about them and they seem cool and they seem like, you know, they're trendsetters and culture setters. I don't know if they were all selling that well, but I felt like I could see the point of them in the community and the hype. And again, it felt like a tastemaker thing. Like, it's, being a gay person, I'm very accustomed to being viewed as part of a tastemaker demographic. And it did kind of feel similar when it came to being a consumer of Krakoa era X-Men comics. But as that started to die down, I really started to like look at everything around me. And this has been going on for a couple of years now at this point, but I've been looking around and just going like, why is Marvel still publishing comics? Nobody seems super happy. The creators seem to love the what they're writing and drawing and penciling and inking and lettering. Like, I'm not talking about, but even then I am sometimes talking about the creators, because sometimes I'm talking about when the creators are like, I put my whole heart and soul into this book, and if you don't go to your comic shop and beg them to stock it and tell everyone you know that you love it and post tweets about it, I will not get another job. And by the way, they paid the cover artist $600 to do it. It just seems like everybody's miserable. Marvel doesn't have a great plan. None of the books are selling especially well. Is over and over again, I don't really understand why we're doing this at all, or why we're not doing it just dramatically differently.
I think it goes back to how we opened the episode. There is just this cycle of our expectation of how the comic industry works, and we're still hiding behind the solicit, which is even a little bit where, you know, just to kind of close out our Marvel coverage, I feel like they are doing a lot of heavy lifting with what's coming. This whole, what is it, Cable? It's Cable and Bishop, or is it just Cable and Timeless?
No, I think it's Cable and Bishop.
Yeah, I mean,
they're inextricably linked.
Well, and like, there's this thing that happens when you tell someone they can't have it, they suddenly want it. And like, that is what every late night talk show host makes all of their political sketches about. They love to take somebody from the other party and say, define this thing. And when you can't, you are a fool. And Marvel said, we can define the X-Men without Cable and Bishop. And fandom said, you are a fool. And so Marvel said, well, we're fools. They are the crux of the biggest thing that's ever happened. And it's just, you know, it is course overcorrection. And it's fine. It's fine, because end of the day, they're not Katy Perry, and so they are not having the worst year of anybody. Although I think technically, as of this moment, One Direction fans are having the worst year of anybody. Really tragically sorry to hear about Liam Payne. You know, just, we also cover music on this channel, so we kind of have to say it in the broadcast. Truly tragic that you know, no matter how it shakes out, no matter who was what, we are in a position where things like, we had a report on John Cassidy a couple of weeks ago. You know, I remember, oh my gosh, it's almost a decade ago now when we lost Steve Dillon. There are these things that happen that fundamentally change how a medium or a media or a genre operate. And while I sadly don't think his last 10 years of output were the same thing, John Cassidy really did truly fundamentally change how comics operated with Planetary and Giant Size Astonishing X-Men and its, you know, oeuvre, its era. I feel like one of the things that happened is we sort of hit Astonishing X-Men is the Sopranos of comics. And it's just all been reverberations of that ever since. Even things like Absolute Power, even things like Devil's Reign are trying to capture the romance of a moment. Like I was talking about earlier, like when an era ends, you want that group of friends or that breakup back.
Yeah, it's true, but you can't ever get it back.
No, ultimately, I'm going to give the entirety of Daredevil, The Woman Without Fear, a B-. I'm going to give Daredevil Gang War a B-, but I'm going to say that the experience was an A, and that Erica Schultz is, as far as I'm concerned, heir apparent to the Daredevil throne, whether it's Matt Murdock, it is Elektra, Blind Spot, or Karen Page stepping in as Karen Devil. And it is going to be in Devilverse, and I'm here for it. I'm even here for Edge of Bullseye verse, which comes about a decade in. So
yeah, I think I'm in the same place. I give Erica Schultz an A unequivocally. I give the Daredevil books featuring Elektra B-, and again, a lot of that is there's no reason for them not to be a single book. There's no reason not to support this character and this writer, especially when you are supporting the male version and the male writer who aren't doing that great. I don't know how you get the pitches for these two and not see them as at least equal. So yeah. As far as Uncanny goes, that's probably a C+, B-. I sort of don't know where I am with that. I hate giving Gail Simone low grades. I hate that we're in this era where
it's fine. She'll just put you in a refrigerator.
Truly. She's gonna send that nightmare monster to beat the shit out of me.
Don't let me step on me. I love you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a lot of it again is not the writers. It is that together they are writing 3 different stories in a universe that's supposed to be connected, and then the X-Men are supposed to be connected more, and it can't really be solved with Cyclops and Rogue having a very contentious phone call one issue. So I don't know. I'm just still not loving any of it.
No, and so I find myself giving Marvel a little bit of a lower grade in 2024 as a whole at this point. Honestly, knowing that we're going to be doing some spooky coverage and knowing what that spooky coverage is going to consist of, having read some of it already, I feel like Marvel's going to have a great Halloween, but Marvel always does scary really well. Who does not always do scary really well, for me, is DC proper. I love Vertigo. I love Wildstorm. I don't know, what was it was Gerard Way, right? What was his imprint? Bigfoot animal shoe or whatever. I don't care. Not my moment. But it's because I'm resistant to people getting the job I want. But anyway, I had a great week with DC, even though I possibly have my lowest DC grade on air to date to share today. Now, I'm going to share 2 grades. I'm going to share 2 grades in a later episode. You did not yet read Batman Full Moon, which I'm going to force you to read. It's fine. It's very good. I enjoyed it very much. But we will cover that in our spooky episode.
Yeah, I was gonna say I saw that today. That would be a good one for our Halloween episode, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, cool.
And I have been reading Nightwing this whole time, and it ended, and that was hey, have a lot of feels. We'll talk about it at some point. Have a lot of feels. But for the most part, I had a great time with DC this week. We'll talk about those at a later date. But my lowest grade on air for a DC book so far, I am so sorry, Titans. I really wanted to love you.
Really?
I did. As a guy who's read this issue of Titans like 16 times, this was a great version of this issue of Titans, but I'm taking over the title. The issue is a time-honored tradition. This was just an issue of X-Force. This was an issue of any book that is about characters that play analogous roles but do not ever get the respect they deserve, being written by brilliant writers, being drawn by incredible artists, brilliant colorists, incredible letterers, and yet never really managing to tell me a goddamn thing. Why isn't Donna on the cover? She's in every page that matters. She's in all the splash pages, but she's not in the list of characters that comes up. And so how isn't Donna going to be the lead of the team? Why is Dick, who clearly was the hero of absolute power, not just taking over the Justice League? Why are those moments from Justice League being treated like afterthoughts when that was one of the best issues? What was it, All In, that actually had that? When that was one of the best issues of the year. And so, like, John Layman crafted a really beautiful moment, but the moment he crafted for me was like he took a really beautiful picture of the kitchen when what I was looking for was a picture of the living room. And so, like, this issue was a C- for me, despite getting great Logan, getting great Dick. I got dicked amazingly this issue. Getting spectacular elements of characters like Wally accepting their position in the greater picture of the universe, seeing incredible appearances from Raven and Starfire, who hopefully will get further development on their characters in later issues. But when you bring in Clock King, I'm just sort of automatically like, oh, okay, well, fine. So this for me was a C-. Sorry about it.
I enjoyed it a little more than you did. I'm going to pull my grade down specifically because of something that I didn't notice that you are 100% correct about. Donna is the main character of this book and is not on the cover, and it
bothers the shit out of me.
As 100% it should. I think I really glossed over that because I'm still in my, like, I never know what's happening with DC phase. But I was just so paying attention to, trying to get the continuity that I really missed that. But that is a huge problem because it really is exactly that. Like, they have a moment where they're like, okay, the only person who can lead the team right now is Donna. So that's really important. And then you're right. Like, at the same time, from the absolute power all in perspective, it does sort of seem like maybe Dick shouldn't even be in the second half of maybe he should not have gone to Titan's Tower with them. He should have said, like, this is my job now. It's fine that he had. There's also a weird thing where, like, this book is bringing up a really good question that, like, all superhero teams, this is also something that can happen in Marvel too, but, like, everybody is now a member of the Justice League, which I love. I think is really cool. The scope of how enormous the new Watchtower is was a little lost on me. And I really love that they talk about that here. But yeah, so this is a big question. If everybody is in the Justice League, why are the Titans? And do they still matter? What's the structure? Who is in charge of that? Like, when do Titan needs supersede Justice League needs? They really start to bring up those questions, and I think they're really cool questions. And I love that the DC writers are thinking about them. But then Beast Boy just starts a fight with a cute baby animal, and I know that's like Beast Boy comedy, but really cut into some cool stuff for, like, a moment that didn't super matter at all. And it goes on. Like, that's the entire page time of that Beast Boy moment could have gone to discussing
Donna Troy not being on the cover.
Well, yeah, to that, I was going to say discussing post absolute power, superhero team dynamics. I gotta say, Pete Wood's art is, like, some of it is just really cool to me and really sexy and really fun, and then every once in a while there will be it's not even like a full panel, it's like one character in a panel that is so glaringly weird looking, and like down to the last page of the comic, it's not a splash page, but there's a large panel of Donna about to punch Clock King, and her mouth looks so weird. It's the only thing I'll have nightmares about this forever. I don't know. It's very, very weird art.
Well, it's that thing I was saying earlier about like, don't bite your finger and tell me it's sexy.
Yeah.
Like,
yes.
I can just see like the strap of what are clearly white briefs and it says BVD. I'm like, that's the hottest thing I've ever seen. And then if I look up and you're biting your finger, it's not going to work for me.
Yeah.
There are moments in this book that are absolutely like accidentally beautiful or sexy. There are moments where I feel like Dick looks incredible. But some of the cartoonishness of the portrayal of Logan, or some of the moments where, in order to portray Arsenal as perhaps being somebody who is edgy, he's given sharp facial features that don't always look what I would describe as overtly human. He doesn't look non-human. He doesn't look like, oh, that's a bird. But like he definitely occasionally looks like a comic book character in a book where frequently everybody looks like a human. And I really know what you mean by there's a depth of Uncanny Valley that occasionally offsets the title.
Yeah. For me as a new reader, this being a jumping on book, this definitely got a B+ from me for that.
Oh, great. That's awesome. I love that.
For that specifically, because I came into this, I had not read previous, and that was an intentional decision because I did want to know what it was like to be, because I want to be able to tell people like this is what the experience is of jumping on, especially mid-number, because with Marvel I usually just tell people if you wait it out, you're going to get to a number 1 and you can start there. But DC, same thing with Catwoman. I jumped on it 69. But I really did want to have the experience here of not having read the previous stuff. And as far as jumping on, 100%, this was a good place. I think the grade might even be lower if I had not been reading Absolute Power, though.
For sure.
But I felt like pulling from Absolute Power, it did a really good job of being a new starting place. As far as some of the critiques that you had, I cannot speak to because they do come from a place of having a lot more experience with these characters and the writing of it. But you did bring up some points that are universally not good. And that lowers the grade for me in terms of just the overall quality of the book. But that jumping on point factor is not unimportant, especially in a world where I feel like DC is putting in the work. Because
I want to enhance your point by saying I loved Catwoman 69. I give it a B+ as a fan of comic books. But I imagine that somebody who is like, oh, I've always enjoyed Catwoman. This is my first issue of this comic or these comics or this universe. This must have been kind of tough. References to past continuity that you would probably need to look up if it was actually continuity or if it was just something she was making up. The limited number of additional characters, like one of the things that if you pick up an issue of Zdarsky, you're reading Penguin and an Amazo, and you're reading Failsafe and Amanda Waller and Vandal Savage. Like, you're getting 6, 7, 8 major DC tentpoles that you can source information from and gain an understanding of the story. But one of the things that was really tough about this Catwoman story was how incredibly limited the perspective was. Now, when I think about that in terms of, or in comparison to like Gotham City Sirens, which was purposefully so big, so inclusive, so absorbative, is that even a phrase? Like, I was trying to drink in all of the elements of the DC universe around it and that were like adjacent to it. I got a real sense of Gotham City Sirens was looking to plug a moment in time. This Catwoman issue is so absorbent. I love that, Kevo. Thank you so much. this Catwoman issue really sought to paint a very exclusive moment. And while I felt like it was a moment that I really enjoyed, I wonder how the casual reader feels about an issue like Catwoman 69.
Hi, I am the casual reader. Yeah, this was you. I'm shocked at how well you described the experience. I will say this might be a me thing. This might just be like, again, years of experience being a new reader to comics, being a new reader to a particular book. This was very much a just let it wash all over you. Just read till the end and maybe don't ask questions. But yeah, like I definitely at the end went and Googled Evie Hall because like, is that a thing? I assumed it was. It is apparently not.
I don't want to say for certain because I am not the
I mean, if you
Catwoman
Google
expert.
Evie Hall DC, nothing comes up.
Yeah, I'm not the Catwoman expert that I am an Elektra expert, but I would like to say that I believe this is meant to be one of those things a la Jessica Jones, where Jessica Jones did not exist at Marvel, but she was meant to represent so many of those late 70s, early 80s, in and out of the Avengers Tower kind of characters. I'm sorry, mansion back then. Jeez, so two-floor thinking. I think she was meant to represent that for the previous identities of Catwoman, who was really forgotten to time for a lot of when she wasn't being treated as Batman's feminine equal.
Yeah. So, you know, the way it's talked about, part of me was like, this is probably really important. And like, there's probably all kinds of Evie Hall stuff I don't know about. And I, again, chose not to look into it because just let the book happen and you'll figure it out. And I do exactly that. And I do feel like I didn't lose out by not knowing whether or not Evie Hall was a real person, but there was a lot of stuff here where it just sort of felt like you're really dropped into somebody's very complex world. And what I will say is that kind of always has to be the case in comics. Like it's complicated no matter what, because it's decades and decades and decades of serial continuity and storytelling. So like, no matter what, it's going to be complicated. What makes it really cool is when the character is cool and when the character seems internally like a complex person, where the lack of accessibility isn't just, oh, I haven't read everything. It is literally, this character is unknowable because they are complicated, and you can't just say, oh, this is the guy that, you know, is the best detective in the world and never kills and has all the great gadgets and can do everything real good. You know, it tends to not be super hard to drop into a Batman story because he's very simplified. And this felt like it was difficult to drop into in a way that said, no, come on, like actually put in the work. You'll have fun. Like, it's not all meant to just be a safe ride for you. Like you've got to play a little bit. So this was a solid B+ for me in like the realm of, if I get 6 issues in, if I put the work in for 6 issues and I don't feel like I got anywhere, I'll look back on this a little not favorably. But if it goes where I think it's going, and if it goes the way I think it's going because it's Torrin Grunbeck, I really love and respect it. Gorgeous art. And I think as somebody whose primary interaction with Catwoman as I've gotten into DC has been as Batman's love interest, even though she really is written as so much more a lot of the time, it's just how you end up seeing her if you are not super focused on reading her stories. She just appears a lot with Bruce Wayne. This was, he's not here at all. That was very exciting for me.
You know, now I want to peel back the layers. It's a real wanderlust moment. I'm pulling back the curtain here. What many of you don't know is that TK has absolutely no knowledge or emotional relationship with film. And so he's unaware that Evie Hall is actually the most famous role played by Diane Keaton in the Woody Alfred Pennyworth film Evie Hall. So it's not his fault. He's uncultured swine. But for the no, I completely agree with you. And one of the things that I think is so significant to the point that you're making is we culturally trade on the value of what we know about Catwoman. You know, whether it's your Michelle Pfeiffer interpretations or your Isis the Cat animated series kind of interpretations, you bring things to the table about this character. And so I wonder if, while we're talking about sort of the overexposure of the identity and tropes that define Batman, we're sort of forgetting that at the same time, Catwoman could have an equally successful attraction at a Six Flags. And like, that's one of the things that I think Torn Grunbeck traded on, maybe for my sake, a little too heavily on within this issue. Oh, you know Catwoman. I do know Catwoman, but I implore you to remind me why she's uniquely Selina Kyle, even in a story where you're reminding me that she might be someone as varied as Evie Hall.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
And at that same time, I thought Action Comics 1070 I've had a really good time with this. I enjoy the Super Family. I don't love them. I enjoy them. I really like talking about the different kinds of kryptonite and talking about them in such casual terms. Green K, or what was it? K Green, K Red. Like this idea of turning it into almost like MMORGP terminology, something that like everybody who's cool and hip knows. Like there was an element of you're in on the joke that I remember one time Mark Waid talking about it, and he said that like when you're dealing with a character like Superman who goes back nearly 100 years and some of the story elements are so silly and they're so funny at this point, you have to embrace them and think about them. And that was why probably my line of dialogue for the month of October so far was just knowing that K Gold exists makes me feel sick in my stomach. Like, what an unbelievable way to take what fandom feels is like an eye roll and make it something so palpable to Clark, a guy who evidently would be a terrible journalist. I had such a great time. I hope you love Mark Waid the way I love Mark Waid at this point.
I do, but I did not love this issue. I
totally accept that. Would you talk a little bit about, as somebody who hasn't read as much Superman, maybe where this wasn't like your thing?
Yeah. So for one thing, this got us to another sort of a little ding for everything DC, which is this says at the start of it, in the 52 days between the end of Absolute Power and the Battle of the Watchtower.
Oh, my second favorite moment. What the fuck is the Battle of the Watchtower? My entire brain is on fire. What is the Battle of the Watchtower?
It's when Darkseid shows up.
Right, but like when you say in the 52 days between, what does that mean for the DC universe? This set my brain on fire.
Yeah, that annoyed me. Because I don't know why in a random Action Comics that is 4 numbers, that is in its thousands, how would I think to get there? You know.
Okay, well, hold on. What's the year?
2024.
Okay, how many numbers is that?
4.
Oh, okay. So you're saying to me that once we hit 4 numbers, you no longer care about anything that happened beforehand? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Let's ditch time. I'm sick of it.
It sounds to me like somebody's a little bit clock king over here.
Listen, if I'm the Messiah, then it's only the year 40. So
39.8.
Well, no, because my first year is 0.
Oh, that's sexy.
Yeah. So anyway, that just to get that it's been 52 days in a random. I mean, I ding Marvel for this all the time too. Like, at least DC had the decency to tell us how long it's been somewhere. At least that was canonically established somewhere. It's been definitely anywhere from 2 weeks to 3.5 years since Krakoa. We'll just never really know. And And so, you know, that we got an established
Talk about
52.
AOL inches.
There you go. That we got an established 52 days. Makes a ton of sense, and is also a great number. Like that makes a ton of sense in terms of like how much time it would take superheroes to build the watchtower, and like that's almost 2 months. Sure. What?
Are you also aware that 52 is a
Yes.
significant number in DC?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
52, new 52. Yes, I know it all. It's also how many weeks there are in the year, so it means they can publish one thing a week.
That's the original 52.
I know.
I bought every fucking issue of that at the
I
time.
know.
It started when I worked at a comic shop, and I was like, this is it. I'll buy this weekly book, and I'll be rich forever. I'll never have to work again. I'll buy this weekly book. My life is made. This is my investment plan. This is it. I have found my own private, personal, and if I had only known that all you need to do is invest in Lego.
I really love this Clayton Henry art and texturing.
Agreed.
The film grain texture that he does on his panels. And maybe this is not him, maybe this is the colorist or something, but whoever did that, this added something very special to the book. I just ultimately like, I know this story didn't really this felt like a story more for people who have read a bunch of this. This did not feel like a jumping on point at all. It wasn't that it was bad. It was just like, I didn't have a ton of investment in what was happening here. And then on top of that, the backup story made no sense to me.
So weird thing about me, if anybody was ever like Nico, we want to give your because I'm pansexual, right? If you want to give your straight side the experience of his life, it would be Elektra, Power Girl, and Supergirl. I love Power Girl. I think she's amazing. I think she is a really interesting character because she was born of such very limited scope and vision. She was born of a visualization and a need to copyright a name to compete with Marvel. Now, one of the things that people don't realize is that Wonder Man exists at Marvel, a character that came up in Avengers Assemble. Wonder Man exists at Marvel to have a parallel copyright to Wonder Woman. And then as such, Power Girl exists as a response to Power Man. So this character was born of a lack of character vision, and yet she's gone on to mean so much to so many people. And like, even if it's as little as I am an ample bosomed woman and having somebody to cosplay makes me feel excited. I don't care what reason it makes somebody happy that this character has come, as long as it's a positive reason, that this character has come to mean so much. I respect her struggle, and also I love the boob window. Fine. I love it. I also love men in the boob window. I think boob windows are great. You, TK, would look phenomenal in a boob window. So, but really, I loved this backup story because one of the things that I think a good backup story does when its job is to be 8 or maybe even as low as 6 pages, its whole story point is to give you a reason to look at the backup story next issue. Nobody really buys a book for the backup story, and in the very rare occasion that it happens, like the Trinity backup stories and Wonder Woman, it winds up getting a special, and we covered the Trinity special. We had an amazing time with it, celebrated how incredible it was to take a look at those Wonder Woman backup stories and have a great time with them. And I feel like this will all make perfect sense someday. We're talking John Mayer in 2002. And it is really, I had a really good time, if for no other reason. I like seeing moments of power for Kara. We're being shown that Kara is so powerful because she can defeat Power Girl, and we're being shown simultaneously that Power Girl is so powerful because she's being defeated by Kara. This idea that this isn't just a game to be played by Robin fighting Wally to show that Robin is more powerful than you think for a non-superpowered person. I love that. This is something that really, for me, as dumb as it was, and as much as this was probably story-wise a C-, what it could mean to me as a reader and a big fan of both of these women, and, you know, honestly, as a guy who finds them both very attractive and got to enjoy looking at them, I did think this was something that will pay off better in trade than it did in a single issue.
Yeah, and you could be totally right. And I could see the whole thing, not just the backup, but the whole thing playing out that way. I think this just really was not for a casual reader, nor was it a great place to pick up. And so it'll be interesting to see. I might go see how far back I have to go to really lock in with this. And yeah, I don't know. It certainly, no part of it I was like, this is bad writing. It felt a little inaccessible to me, the newcomer.
And speaking of a book that would be inaccessible to a newcomer, but I think by this point for you should have been kind of like fine. Green Lantern 16. I would barely talk about this. Honestly, This is like, until this whole story is over, I love the himboification of Hal as somebody who has tried to shed all of his, like, I hurt myself today, oh God, you never could, you never did shit. I would love to be the himbo Hal has become. But at the end of the day, I don't think I got enough out of Green Lantern 16 to pass judgment on it, good or bad. I liked what I read. I'm here for Carol. I love John. Hal always provides an antagonist and a protagonist in the same thing. And I just don't think we can really have an opinion on this until we know a little bit more about what's going on with the Sorrow Lanterns. And I'm going to save all Mogo opinions for a minute.
And did they make Mogo as a copyright challenge to Ego?
I ask Alan, my good buddy Alan Moore. Hey, fellow chaos magician.
I think ultimately all of these issues have been good. All of these issues have been in the B range minimum. Some of them have been even better. I think this story is going to bear out to have been a really fantastic one. And I think, pulling back and judging it as a story, even doing that now, even looking at how far we've come from issue 1, and with the inclusion of War Journal, with the tie-ins of Absolute Power, with
Thank you for mentioning War Journal, with 15 having that backup story that was the epilogue. That's a really sharp inclusion.
Yeah, with the Civil Corps being in the mix too. It's all really cohesive and really, this is interwoven really well. I think it could be kind of difficult. It's impossible. You can't pick up here. And I sort of don't like, because some of the, again, 16 with Titans, perfect jumping on point, but everything's getting the all-in marker in the top left. And I might have saved that for when, or I would have said, you have to make this a jumping on issue if we're going to put that on there, one or the other.
Agreed.
But I might not have put it on anything where it's not useful. And this was where, because we had talked about some of these as jumping on issues. And in the case of Catwoman and in the case of Titans, yes, great jumping on issues. And so those were the two I read first and saw the all in and sort of thought that the stuff that also had it on there might also be intended for jumping on. Action Comics, not a good jumping on point. And I experienced that as somebody who has not read any of it, and can confirm this is not the place to try and start. Similarly, or on the opposite side of things, I've read all of Green Lantern now, and all of Green Lantern War Journal, Green Lantern in, I've experienced Green Lantern in Absolute Power, and then Civil Corps. So I'm fully caught up, and I can tell you from the other side of things, I would not recommend starting here if you want to get up on Green Lantern. You would have to go back and start at issue 1 of this and issue 1 of War Journal, and that's okay. But it's just interesting to see how DC is doing it all over the place when it comes to their various books. Some of them, it's going to be issue 16. Some of them, it's going to be issue 69. some of them it's going to be issue 16 and it's not going to be a jumping on point as in Green Lantern. But overall, when I pull back, every time I look at the bigger picture of the serial story that's being told here, I really do think it's cool. I love, as somebody who knows a lot of Lantern, is aware of who a lot of Lanterns are, but doesn't know them well, this has been a great time to get to know them a little bit better.
Like my husband, Larfleeze.
Yeah. It was great to see Larfleeze a little bit, although I feel bad that he is in such distress. But no,
that's
sure
correct.
But like this is, I know what Guy Gardner is known for, and I'm getting to know him a little better in this. And, I know Joe because I know MK Jemison, but I'm getting to see her be more active in this. And I know Jon Stewart, but I'm getting to see him be a little more active in this. So it's been really, really cool overall. The only thing, if I have a little caveat, it is that it is getting more and more complicated all the time. And on top of the complex mechanics of how the lanterns work, how the rings work, who has a ring and why they have that ring, we're then adding an entire other villain story from an entire other book, that being War Journal, and that is now dovetailing with this one, but not in that way where they're like, and now we have suffused the two villains from two different stories into one so that you're not confused. It is that the one villain from War Journal is just coming in and making things messier. It's fun, don't get me wrong, but it is a little complicated. And then the thing that I was just like, maybe we don't do this because again, it's just too complicated, is they get to a place in the middle of this book where they go, and as we know, Tharos, the guy who has been the main villain for 15 issues, is dead. We're on to new things now. Like, we're the villains now. This is so much less complicated because this crazy guy who was really unpredictable is dead. And then at the end of the issue, they're like, but also he is not dead. So it's just even more complicated.
And one of the things that I am so interested to continue talking about this series as a result of is I feel like you are a Nightwing where I feel like I'm a little bit more a Batman. You are your own person. You're doing your own thing. It is like, yes, we connect, but we're separate. But something like Green Lantern, because the Lantern Corps is so unified across all the colors, it wouldn't be weird if, I was a Blue Lantern and you were a Purple Lantern. And that would still be connective in the same way that Nightwing is connective to Batman. And so the idea of the relationship of the Lantern Corps is, for me, maybe a little bit closer to something like the Spider-Verse, where everybody's special to one another, even if they're not directly connected. So any two Spider-Verse characters, you'd be like, oh, sure, of course, that makes sense. And then at the same time, when you think about Batverse, immediately you're drawn to something like X-Men, where the relationships are so intimate, even when they're just sort of surface. And so that there is this point of comparison I'm really excited to see, because we've had so much Batman to reflect on. I'm really excited to see where you're going to land with something like Green Lantern ultimately, because all said and done, 16 issues and 12 issues and 6 issues of Alan Scott and a bunch of other stuff in between, I do feel like we are still running a little story short here. We're still running kind of like lantern rings are magic and people are complicated by the trade. And that's not the same thing as a whole story. But one thing that is a whole story, and I just want to do grades really quick on it. We will pick it up. We will talk about it. It's going to run for, I think, 12 issues. Batman and Robin Year One. This episode ran a little bit longer than we expected. We had such a great time with it. And I want to give Batman and Robin Year One the respect it deserves, being by one of my all-time favorite comic book teams of Mark Waid and Chris Samnee. Now, we talked about Mark Waid's genius earlier this episode. So I would love to get just sort of like a cursory reaction to year one. It is not my favorite retelling, but it's a pretty strong A- for me. I think this goes comfortably between Dark Victory. No, I'm sorry. Dark Victory. I guess it would have to go between Dark Victory and Last Halloween, but I'm just not used to there being anything after Dark Victory to refer to. So I'm kind of like, how do you even? Yeah, I guess it goes after that. I love Alfred being like, I'm sorry, you think you're going to be a bad dad? You were a bad son. And like, that was really cool. The romance of the color scheme on the Batmobile felt like 1992 in a very sexy way to me. I love this. Chris Samnee could draw my biography, and I would really love Mark Waid to write the forward, because if Mark Waid did the genuine character study that he does on people on me, I'd die.
Chris Samnee art was absolutely phenomenal. Really made me want more in a lot of areas, and was just a real treat. Mark Waid's writing, obviously a very talented writer. A quarter of what we have covered from DC has been Batman origin stories and retellings of Batman's past. Because that's approximately a third of what DC prints. And we
you're right. We've skipped some.
And we just haven't covered it all. I am a little bored. I love it. I love being bored in this case because I love doing the show, and doing the show is never boring. So if I'm bored by a book, I will never be bored by the grander context of doing it for the show. I love doing Batman stuff because I know you love it. And so that energy is great. And then it also, I'm like, okay, so what does Nico think of this? Like, what are we going to get out of this talking about it? What can he tell me that might change my perspective when we discuss it? But for me, on a first read, bored, not really super interested. Love Mark Waid, and I do appreciate that he walked the very fine line of Robin needs to be overconfident and annoying, but that's not a fun character to read most of the time. Especially now when we're in the year 2024 and comic sidekicks we've seen them be the worst little shit children of all time, all the time. So, that's a tough one. Like you have to show him being that way because that's how it was. And you want to honor that, but also, it's not a great character trait. So it's not fun to watch. So yeah, I was bored. I didn't want it. I was Boy Wonder and the Mike Allred one, Dark Age, have done a lot more for me in terms of being in a Batman and Robin origin story, classic art, vibes to end all vibes thing. That is also really fun and kind of quirky and cool. So it's you're shooting yourself in the foot here, DC. If you make a lot of this stuff, it's going to get compared to itself. Muted.
That is even part of, I think, where Marvel is trying so hard to get away from that, with constantly telling stories that bring you back to that instead of just going forward. DC seems to want to just go forward, and tell those bring you back to the past stories, whereas Marvel's hoping to do it all in sort of like one place. They're hoping to bring you forward on Daredevil and bring you back to he's Catholic and single at the same time. And that's maybe where we're not as happy with one company as the other, but I really do agree with your point. As I was putting this on the schedule, I was like, oh fuck, this is like the 8th Batman origin. This is a little too much even for me as a guy who did an extra episode of just Batman origin shit. So I really do get it. I really respect your take on that. You know, this is like 2 of the best hours of my week every single week. I love this man next to me. That is my best friend. I think he's the coolest guy in the entire universe. That's my brother. And it's produced by the man that I trust to hold the leash on my collar. So all said and done, I think we're pretty lucky, all said. So I am pretty happy. And I think when you're talking about these books, these titles, comparing things like Batman and Robin Year One to Elektra taking over Daredevil, one of the things that you're continuously talking about is even when you're thinking about the same algorithm or the same tropes, you still have to accept that there's going to be treatments that wind up a little bit different. Elektra has been Daredevil. Selena Kyle has never been Batman. Yet, Catwoman has been able to have consistent, significant publishing over the last 40 years, where there have been any given 5 years at a time where Elektra sees 2 issues in the entire 5 years. So I think part of what we're discussing is the fact that universes support storytelling differently, and that kind of motivates our different reactions. I wouldn't be surprised if in 2025, in the month of October, we're talking about how we're so upset with how October signals the moment where DC has lost all of the goodwill that they built up with absolute power. And man, we're so impressed with Marvel 10 months in after Timeless featuring Cable and Bishop. So I'm really excited. Kevo, you know, I know we're coming back later this week. We're going to be talking about at least Drag Race later in the weekend. I know we are seeing Bob in Red Bank, New Jersey this week, and I can't wait. Was there anything in this episode that really stoked your fancy, and where can everybody find you online?
In particular, that stoked my fancy, that stoked my ire is the way that they played games with you guys on what titles came out. It's not just frustrating for you guys as people who speak on this as, you know, intellectuals, but it's frustrating for fans. And when you get jerked around with stuff like that, it makes it really hard to keep up. Something that I know we're going to be talking about soon for its 30th anniversary is Gargoyles. And one of the things I'll be talking about is the struggle that it's had over the years to maintain any kind of return when it comes to being in comics. Its schedule being frequently yanked around really messed with it for a while there. It's been steady for the last couple of years, but you know, these things affect the longevity of stories, and you know, it's tough. So that whomped, but I'm glad that we're able to pull everything together. And you know, you guys are great. I love listening to you guys. And as always, you can find me on the socials at Kevo Really. That's KEVOREALLY.
Well, and to that point, Kevo, I think Gargoyles has had absolutely one of the most successful continuations in comics that any cartoon has ever had. So your point is well taken on this episode, sir.
Good.
TK, is there anything you didn't get to say about anything we covered this episode? Final thoughts, and where can anybody find that incredibly handsome face?
I think I said everything I wanted to say and then some. But if you want to just confirm that with me, you can find me at TK Elemental. Nico, take us home.
That'd be Nico Action, NICOACTION, and Nico Action Music, NICOACTIONMUSIC. You guys can check me out on SoundCloud, YouTube Music, and more. Also, though, if you guys want to check out this amazing show, that is, of course, at X is for Show, HTML, and X is for Podcast, wherever you're checking out podcasts, videos, and more. Though I would point out, the only way this works if you guys like, subscribe, and comment. Let us know what you think. Like the amazing Dreamer in DC Comics and Bob the Builder, we cannot wait to hear your guys' thoughts. And additionally, 3 things you guys can do for us. Number 1, stay safe. It's a crazy world out there, but we want to make sure you guys are safe every single day. Number 2, be brave, because it's hard to stay yourself, but we know you can do it. Number 3, evolve daily. Who you were yesterday, incredible. Who you are today, we love it. But who you are tomorrow, that's the real dream. And until then, we cannot wait. So stay safe, and we'll see ya.